So excited for this.
Peace to wonderful tunnel tonight.
We need to talk about America's infrastructure.
Through the infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Aging infrastructure.
I'm inside one of the oldest rail tunnels in the whole of America. A route that supports an enormous chunk of this country's economy.
The biggest bottlenecks in the entire Northeast corridor.
And it's crumbling.
The tunnel is really aging. It was built 151 plus years ago.
And it is long overdue a replacement.
And it's not just tunnels, it's bridges too.
I'll never forget the faces of the people that were stuck in New York Penn Station. They all wanted to get home, and they couldn't because of this bridge.
It is probably the worst service that I've ever seen.
The decline of this country's infrastructure is no secret, but the state of the nation's most important railway should worry every American. It's been neglected for far too long. Some parts of it are over a century old and should have been retired years ago. If just one part of the line failed, it would cost the US more than $100 million a day. But help is finally at hand. At last, billions are being spent to upgrade this critical rail line that much of the nation depends on. With some incredible access, I've packed a bag and I'm taking a rail trip up the US to see just how serious the situation is and what's now being done to put things right before time runs out.
This is currently the fastest train in the whole of the United States, and it runs from Washington DC, back there behind me, all the way up to Boston at speeds of up to 150 miles an hour. But it's not a given that it can do that, right? It relies on all different kinds of infrastructure to make that happen along the route. Bridges, tunnels, things like that. The problem is, here in the US, a lot of that stuff is aging and now in desperate need of replacement, which is why you don't see trains moving as fast here as you do in places like China, Japan or France. But that might be about to change.
The upgrades now rolling out across this route will do a whole lot more than safeguard millions of journeys and a huge slice of the US economy. They could enable America to finally run truly high-speed trains, an ambition that it's harboured since forever. With billions at stake, complex engineering, grinding bureaucracy and the eyes of the world looking on, these projects throw down a gauntlet to the United States. Can it still build infrastructure that boosts the nation, and can it get it done in time?
Every day that we wait, every period of time that goes by, we put ourselves at greater risk.
This is the story of America's long overdue quest to save its most important railway.
So, welcome aboard the busiest passenger railway in the whole of the US, the Northeast Corridor.
Stretching for more than 450 miles and connecting some of America's biggest cities, including the capital and New York, it carries over 800,000 people and 2,000 trains every day. The region it serves generates 20% of the nation's GDP and provides 30% of its jobs. In fact, if the so-called Northeast megalopolis was its own country, it would have the third largest economy in the world, bigger than Germany. And it's this line that made much of that happen. Its origins go back to the days of the first railroads in the mid-1800s.
All this is typical of the industrial genius of America, making giant industrial systems of production and transport operate with an amount of efficiency no other nation can match.
But it wasn't until the late 1960s that it was combined into a single railway. Then 1971 saw the launch of Amtrak, America's national passenger railroad company.
From Boston, Amtrak has 9 comfortable trains to New York every day with a one-way fare of $30 or less.
It became the primary owner of the line and now manages most of the infrastructure. Fast forward to 2025.
And this is what Amtrak's flagship service on the Northeast Corridor looks like. These Accelas, like the one I'm on now, are capable of going almost as fast as a full-blown high-speed train.
According to the International Union of Railways, trains are officially considered high speed when they go past 155 miles an hour, and this one falls short by just 5 miles an hour. Even though Amtrak is introducing new and improved trains in the near future, there are other reasons why the corridor doesn't really compare to what you see across Asia and Europe. You see, that top speed is only possible on certain parts of the line, around 50 of the railway's 457 miles. It's because right along the route there are countless places where trains are either forced into single tunnels and tracks or made to slow down, and that's all thanks to infrastructure that was built well over a century ago which the railway still relies on today. But only for a little while longer. In late 2023, the Northeast Corridor Commission set out a plan for a series of projects that's going to bring the most out-of-date sections of the line up to modern standards, all for a whopping estimated cost of $176 billion. Authorised by Congress, the Commission consists of 18 members, including from Amtrak, the US Department of Transportation, and the 8 NEC states, plus DC. From huge tunnels under Manhattan to massive bridges across major rivers, it's a significant amount of work, and much of it is beginning to take shape. It's all happening now because of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law of 2021, which saw $16 billion allocated to the NEC for repairing and replacing the most out-of-date infrastructure. That, along with contributions from Amtrak and the various states, gave the projects full funding, meaning construction could get started. But it's only the first step. Completing the whole plan is going to take many more rounds of federal funding in the future. The question for now is whether the United States can pull off these most urgent projects before it's too late. So, I've been on this for a while now, and for a country that gets some criticism for its railways, it's actually been a fairly smooth ride so far. But I'm about to hit the first choke point, just outside Baltimore's Penn Station, where 4 tracks are reduced down to 2. Yes, it's a tunnel, but the one this train is going into is more than 150 years old, and it's in very poor state. But don't just take my word for it. Here's a local commuter called Joe.
So I've been through this tunnel 1,000 times. And, but when folks talk about how badly the Baltimore Tunnel needs an upgrade, you don't need me to tell you. I've been there.
To find out just how bad things have got, I want to head down that tunnel and see it for myself. But right now, it's full of big fast trains like that. So, I've got to wait until the very middle of the night when Amtrak are going to completely close the tunnel to trains, and in a very rare move, let us go inside to see what's happening as visitors. That almost never happens, which is very, very cool. What's not so cool is that that's currently several hours away, so until then, coffee.
What I'm heading down into is one of the oldest parts of the entire Amtrak network. The Baltimore and Potomac Tunnel first opened back in 1873 when those early railroads were first being built.
That's the trick. These are hand warmers, mate. It's just life-changing. So cool. Going in.
Guiding me through the twilight is Amtrak's Dante Dianutis.
What's this? What's happening here?
So this is a part of some of the water infiltration that comes in and obviously freezes. It mixes with the dirt coming in and it kind of goes along the tracks. You can see that you have an issue with water here.
So it's leaking basically. There's
exactly, yes.
Groundwater coming in.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
We do have drains and, like I said, pumps to counteract that, but that is one of the aspects of the tunnel in its age. As you can obviously see, it does require a high level of maintenance and support, as well as attention to make sure all the issues and all the challenges with the tunnel being the age it is being addressed. So it's showing its age, but it's through a lot of hard work and dedication from Amtrak. We do keep this tunnel in a state of operation for our passengers, keep everyone safe. We're constantly working to divert the water or pump it out. One of the other challenges is maintaining the track structure. So obviously you have wood ties and steel rail that are introduced to water in a wet environment, so it does lead to excessive wear and conditions that require more frequent maintenance.
So the brickwork in this tunnel that's lined this tunnel for more than 150 years is deteriorating, and there's water coming in the walls. That's all you can hear in here is the trickling of water. You can see here it's actually frozen because it's so ridiculously cold in here tonight. The water's frozen as it's come in. And it's not just that, the floor of this tunnel is sinking.
So you can see the obvious constraint that how close these track centers are, right?
Yeah.
So when you do work on any of these tracks, that's
that
what
close to a
yes,
live
exactly,
train.
and that creates the bottleneck where if you need to do work over here, you really have to shut the whole tunnel down.
And when you say you shut the whole tunnel down, you mean create a temporary break in the northeast corridor.
Exactly.
It's like that important.
Exactly.
And that would be disastrous. As well as Amtrak, this piece of infrastructure is also used by state commuter and freight trains. Even with the tunnel operating as it should, the timetable here can get very crowded, and more than 10% of trains face some sort of delay. Then there's the painfully slow speed restrictions.
There are two pretty significant curves as you go through the tunnel. So one of the challenges and areas of concern for this tunnel is that trains do have to slow down to 30 miles an hour because of the track curvature. And because of that, it does slow them down coming up north from DC. They have to approach coming into the station much slower than they normally would.
Coming out of the tunnel, I took a moment to reflect on what I'd just seen, which was far worse than what I'd expected.
So, it is just after 2 o'clock in the morning. The cold has got into my bones, like it's really, we've been outside for hours now. It's bitterly, bitterly cold. Honestly, I can't believe what I've just seen. Like, we're in the world's biggest economy, the world's only superpower, and an enormous part of its economy is hung on a rail route that has a piece of infrastructure like that on it. It's amazing. Like, it's testament to what was constructed here 150 years ago, that it's still there, still functioning, but it's falling apart. There is so much risk here. And, millions of people, it's the story of infrastructure. Millions of people wouldn't see or think about this tunnel unless it went wrong, at which point all hell would break loose. Real eye-opener. Shocking stuff.
Thankfully, an immense $6 billion construction project is now underway to phase out this old tunnel and modernise around 10 miles of the surrounding corridor. It's called the Frederick Douglass Tunnel Programme, after the civil rights leader and abolitionist.
The Frederick Douglass Tunnel Programme will resolve this bottleneck, building a 2 mile of a new tunnel that will increase the speed. This tunnel is only 30 miles per hour. The new tunnel will be up to 100 miles per hour.
Luigi Rosa leads the Amtrak team that's building this new tunnel under the heart of Baltimore. Before this, he spent years working on Italy's high-speed rail system, Oman's National Railroad, and 2 major projects in New York.
But also it will provide that redundancy that is missing today. This is a choke point with the 1 tube, 2 tracks. The new tunnel will provide 2 tubes, each tube 1 track, and will provide the ability to increase the traffic, the speed, and reduce the delay on the Northeast Corridor.
The upgraded tunnel will take a slightly longer but smoother route further to the north than the existing line. And that means a lot of tunnelling under built-up areas, which has triggered opposition from some residents in nearby Reservoir Hill. There have also been claimed that the city's black and low-income communities are being disproportionately affected, leading to a civil rights complaint in 2024.
Frustrated, angry, upset.
They have violated our civil rights. We were left out of the process and rendered voiceless.
Amtrak says it's been liaising with local people throughout the process and is adamant that any impact is going to be minimal.
What we have been doing the last, I want to say, several years is engaging communities to really explain what the plan is, how we are, planning to build the tunnel, especially where the tunnel is deep, is an urbanized area, but it's so deep that there is no disruption for the community, for the people, living on the surface. They will not hear or see anything.
That may be the case for the main tunnelling, but it's hard to miss the work that's already being done to prepare for what's going to become one of the entrances for the new route.
And this corner of West Baltimore is where all the action's going to kick off It might not look like much, but this could be one of the most consequential bits of land in America right now. Under my feet, the Northeast Corridor will pass through here. This is going to be the launch site for the TBM, the tunnel boring machine for that new tunnel. So it's going to spur off, or eventually the Northeast Corridor will spur off from where it currently runs into a new cutting, down into a tunnel, under where the existing Northeast Corridor is. You know, these guys, they're going to be digging under the current live Northeast Corridor with this new tunnel.
There'll also be ventilation facilities, updated roads and bridges, and a new station in West Baltimore for regional trains. Tunnelling is due to start in 2026, with the overall scheme completing in 2035. But there's a lot more to this railway than tunnels. In fact, they make up just 2% of it. When you're travelling along a line that runs parallel to the coast and crosses multiple rivers, you might expect to find a fair few bridges. And, well, that would be an understatement.
The Northeast Corridor has over 1,000 of them, and surprise, surprise, many have got to such a ripe old age that their replacement is now way overdue. A couple in particular operate in such an antiquated way that it seems almost baffling to us today, like the one I'm going to check out up ahead. So that behind me is the Susquehanna River Rail Bridge, another key part of the Northeast Corridor that's already had over 100 birthdays. Amazingly, that structure has been carrying passenger and freight trains over this body of water since 1906. And it features one of the largest movable sections on the entire Northeast Corridor.
To learn more, I've come to meet Dexter Fordyce. He's in charge of Amtrak's plan for the future of this bridge.
This is one of our trains that coming from the north that is going towards DC.
So that train's going from New York all the way down to DC. So this bridge is a key part of the infrastructure, you know, for the people wanting to go between those two cities and the other cities in between.
Yes.
Everything goes over this bridge.
Everything goes over this bridge.
So how many trains a day typically are we talking?
It's over 100 trains a day.
100 trains a day?
It was built with a Howe Truss design. That's a structural system defined by its vertical and diagonal components that distribute the load. But perhaps the best thing about it is the rather outdated trick it still performs around 12 times a year.
Now, as I mentioned, this bridge can move. That middle section you see over there can rotate to let big ships pass through. And while that might sound like a really clever feature, particularly on a bridge this vintage, it's actually pretty inconvenient because getting that middle section to turn is not a straightforward process.
As it was constructed without any modern technology, a team of around 30 workers have to come out and move it by hand, and that takes a lot of time.
Opening the bridge, it's really manual. There is all manual labor. There's no push a button and the bridge opens so manually.
People are physically pushing this thing.
People are physically pushing it.
Sounds crazy.
Yes, in this era, yes.
Then there's the fact that when trains are able to go over it, they can only do so at a maximum of 90 miles an hour. It's not as bad as in Baltimore, but quite a long way short of that 155 mile an hour target.
That's why in a few years' time, Amtrak's going to be saying goodbye to a piece of infrastructure that's served it well for generations, but that's no longer really fit for purpose. In its place, it's going to be something not just bigger, but better, and more than able to deliver those higher speeds.
Instead of just 2 tracks on a single bridge, the crossing's being upgraded to 4 tracks over 2 bridges, and the first one is almost ready to start work.
Now, we don't know for certain what this new bridge is going to look like yet because it's still in the design phase. But some initial conceptual renders have been released that kind of show the direction of travel. And they indicate that we're going to be getting a bridge that looks pretty different to the one that's there now.
Gone is the rusty steel truss work on top of brick piers that rise only a short distance out of the river. Costing $2.7 billion, the new crossings are going to have concrete decks and piers with a greater gap between the water and the bridge. In the centre, a 120 metre long tide arch channel span will bear some resemblance to the earlier structure. This is where, thanks to an 18-metre vertical and 70-metre horizontal clearance, ships are going to be able to travel underneath the bridges without them having to move. Contracts were awarded in December 2023 and preparations are now in full swing. A joint venture between contractors Flatiron and Herzog was given the role of construction manager at risk and is delivering the project in 2 phases.
There's been a great collaboration on the project to get the construction as far away from the existing rail as possible. It's a rail bridge, so it's very heavy. 10-foot diameter shafts in the water, very stout piers. We have 12-foot deep steel girders, all of which is going to go right across there for, almost a mile. So it's a big operation to build a bridge in this way.
Although completion isn't expected for more than a decade, preliminary works have already begun.
One example is the removal of some old piers that used to be here supporting an historic bridge to clear the path and make way for that new bridge structure. Otherwise, it may feel like there's not really much going on here. But behind the scenes, there's a ton of stuff happening.
You see, while those contractors bear much of the responsibility, there are multiple other organisations involved too. Amtrak, the Federal Railroad Administration, the local Department of Transport. The project is one big collaboration. As a result, these companies are embracing digital construction management platforms like Procore to keep everything under close control.
The one thing that large projects of this size generate is an awful lot of paperwork, albeit it's digital paperwork these days. But yeah, we use all kinds of technology, one of which is Procore. And what that means is there's just seamless integration of all of the different modules within Procore, or the RFI module, so that we can get questions out there, submittals for all the things that need to be reviewed by either the designer or Amtrak. As we're using Procore, even Amtrak has now adopted Procore, so both parties are using Procore. It's all just so seamless.
When changes happen, plans can be updated instantly, so whoever goes to look at them next always gets the most up-to-date information. It's been an efficient pre-construction workflow that's let Matthews and his team develop their build plans and get everything ready and coordinated for the main event.
It's very exciting to be a part of this, with this and several other projects along the corridor. We're thrilled to be here, and we're keen to get going, which hopefully later this year we'll actually start getting some construction going.
Now, at this point, you might be thinking, well, that all sounds great, but when are we actually going to get spades in the ground along this corridor, especially when things seem pretty urgent? Well, the good news is work is already happening, and the next bridge I'm heading to see is more than 3/4 complete.
For that, I'm going to need to head a little further up the line towards one of my favourite cities, New York. But first, I'm going to make a quick stop to visit a building that's just as important to keeping this railway functioning as all the stuff that makes up the infrastructure. Around halfway along the corridor between Baltimore and New York is Philadelphia. It's the 6th most populated city in the US and home to one of the country's most beautiful stations. A place that's also getting a big overhaul, both inside and out.
You come down to the area around Philadelphia's 30th Street station, and there's loads happening, lots of anticipation, bit of construction work going on, and this area could be seeing a much wider regeneration in the years to come. But at the centre of all of that, anchoring it all, is 30th Street station itself. Look at this. They just don't build stations like this anymore. It's just like coming into some sort of cathedral of Art Deco. It's stunning. It's like going back to 1933 when it first opened. Beautiful, beautiful place. Now one of the busiest passenger stations in the whole of the US, and included on the National Register of Historic Places, which I'm so pleased about because this place needs to be protected and preserved.
The station's getting a $500 million renovation that'll bring it up to date. Facilities are being modernised, new retail units are being added, and Amtrak's offices are getting a revamp, all while preserving some of the station's most historic elements, like the bronze doors, wooden benches, and those incredible 1930s lights.
As you can see, a lot of construction work happening, a lot of meticulous, careful work to restore this building and help it go on to serve America for another century or so. Coming into a space like this is almost like stepping back in time when they were building stations like this, when this transportation system was more celebrated.
back to a time when those railroads and the tunnels and bridges we're talking about were first put in place, you know. But it feels like not a lot's really changed since then. So it's nice to see this being restored and the projects happening that we're now talking about in this video.
Although it's not yet certain when or even if the redevelopment of the wider area here will happen in its entirety, the improvements to 30th Street look set to finish in 2027. The pace of this journey has been crazy. With 30th Street checked off, it's time for me to jump on another train and head up to New Jersey.
Thank you for choosing Amtrak. Watch the gap between the train and the station's platform.
Lovely accent you got there. New Jersey.
Austria.
So this right here is New Jersey's Portal Bridge. Again, another key bit of infrastructure that's over a century old. Does a really important job. You know, millions of people rely on this. It carries trains from Newark across and over into Penn Station in the middle of Manhattan.
As well as Amtrak, the Portal Bridge is used by New Jersey Transit, America's third largest transit operator. With over 150,000 passengers crossing it every day, it's thought to be the busiest train span in the Western Hemisphere. And yet, delays are frequent. Due to their age, the mechanics that also make this bridge move are prone to malfunctioning.
Delays remain in and out of Penn Station tonight after the Portal Bridge got stuck again.
It's old, it's tired, it needs replacing, just like the Susquehanna Bridge. But in this case, they're well on with this replacement. This right here is the new Portal North Bridge. When it opens, it's going to take over the job of the original Portal Bridge, give that guy a break after a century of carrying trains. That old bridge is then going to be demolished.
My name is AJ Nai, and I'm the project director for Amtrak on this project. We're building a new bridge next to an existing railroad bridge. When you do that, when you're building caissons and piles, you're going to have some vibration that will bring settlements. The team worked together to ensure that we address settlement issues on timely fashion. It's going to be reliable. The bridge will also operate from 60 miles per hour to 90 miles per hour.
It's awesome to see this construction site, like these huge arches here. There's going to be 3 of them in total, 2 are in. They were so big they had to be constructed up in upstate New York near Albany and then floated down the Hackensack River, lifted up into place. It's massive. It's so cool to see a big infrastructure project like this actually happening in America. It's wicked.
People ask me what I do for a living. I tell them I work for New Jersey Transit and we help move people. 0 delays with this bridge being from 20 feet from the old Portal Bridge to 50 feet. And it's a fixed span. There's no need to open it, and the maritime traffic gets to go through 24/7.
Now, granted, that might not sound like a huge deal to people from other parts of the world, but in a country that struggles to build new infrastructure like this, it's a massive step forward. For a special treat, the team took me somewhere that most visitors don't get to go, up onto the new bridge deck itself.
Under my feet here are where tracks are going to run to carry trains from DC up the Northeast Corridor, through New York and eventually on up to Boston. This is a preview of what's to come, right? You saw the Susquehanna Bridge, you saw the B+P Tunnel in Baltimore. This is what the change looks like. This is a new piece of construction. This whole journey I've wanted to see spades in the ground on this project, and it's so cool to see this. This is what rebuilding America's infrastructure looks like.
When it's finished in 2027, this bridge will form the first big piece of the giant Gateway Program puzzle, a comprehensive set of works that's being described as the most urgent infrastructure scheme in the United States. It includes the expansion of New York's Penn Station, along with a massive underground route that'll connect this new bridge with America's biggest metropolis.
That over there is one of the greatest cities in the world. It is New York, and it's where we're heading next. We made it, guys. We made it to New York. So I've just come from New Jersey to another point where this route really narrows down, this time into 2 single-track rail tunnels that run under the Hudson River and come up here in New York. Again, me doing that little journey I've just done is not a given, because those tunnels are also showing their age.
Constructed back in the early 1900s, the North River tunnels were built before the age of TBMs, that's tunnel boring machines. Although the systems that were used did bear some resemblance to 21st century TBMs in appearance, the way they actually worked, as you'd imagine, was a lot more primitive. Instead of giant cutting heads powered by electricity, these tunnel shields use compressed air to blast their way through the soft, muddy ground beneath the Hudson.
Fast forward to today, and as well as the usual kind of wear and tear that you'd expect with a century-old piece of infrastructure, the arrival of Hurricane Sandy in 2012 made things a lot worse.
The tunnels were flooded with seawater, which put trains out of action for 5 days. It also left behind corrosive chemicals that have continued to degrade the concrete lining and some of the systems inside.
This is an example of the corroded wiring that is part of Gateway. If we let it continue, this tunnel will not last.
Another cause for concern is that this represents another single point of failure for the Northeast Corridor, which means if something was to go seriously wrong, it could lead to a 75% reduction in services or even a complete shutdown, which would be catastrophic. That is why a new tunnel, the Hudson Tunnel, is now being constructed just downriver.
Having a second crossing will double the capacity and make these services faster and more reliable, all while ensuring the country's most heavily used passenger line can continue for another century or so and even beyond. Once the new tunnel's complete, the existing one's then going to be given a full rehabilitation, and then eventually both are going to be able to operate together. Groundbreaking began back in November 2023, and there's plenty of action to see today, especially if you come down to Hudson Yards, New York's newest high-rise district.
So we're now standing on a key section of the High Line in New York where, under my feet, there is a lot of construction activity going on. Teams here are putting in a new section of concrete casing and working to create a right-of-way for that new tunnel from the river over, under Hudson Yards and into Penn Station.
That'll be done using the cut and cover method with horizontal bracing that also acts as supports where the High Line passes over the top. The first sections between 10th and 11th Avenue were completed back between 2013 and 2018.
Another sign that this project is finally moving forward is the activity happening out there on the water. It might not look like much, but those barges are currently carrying out ground stabilisation, which has to happen before the tunnel boring machines can begin their journeys.
So far, they've built a test cofferdam, which is where a barrier is built inside the river, leaving a space in the middle for construction work. To do this, a series of piles were driven into the ground with sheets placed in between them, creating a sealed dry area once the water had been pumped out. They've also been used for geophysical surveying and sampling before the main work begins. That'll include injecting grout into the silt of the riverbed and mixing cement into the existing soil to make the ground a lot more stable. Meanwhile, back in New Jersey, preparations are already underway near what's going to become the Western Tunnel Portal. A road bridge is being constructed to make way for the train tracks, and these pictures from 2024 show the job progressing smoothly.
Okay, so you get the gist, right? There's loads of stuff either planned or happening here, but what is it all going to mean? Well, when these works finish, and the new trains are rolled out, that faster stock's rolled out, the speed limit on this railway is going to be increased to 160 miles per hour, technically taking it into that high-speed category. Now, it might not sound like a big increase, but actually it is pretty significant because it means that trains are going to be able to travel faster for longer, cutting journey times, and effectively bringing major cities closer together.
Even so, 160 miles per hour is still no match for the bullet trains that other nations have been enjoying for decades. Frankly, America's best hope for coming close to that lies in mega projects over on the opposite side of the country, particularly Brightline West.
It's official. Construction on a new high-speed rail from Southern California to Las Vegas has begun.
Actually have the funds to move forward, and thus the groundbreaking today.
The goal is to have the rail system running by the summer of 2028.
For now though, the Northeast Corridor remains the best of what the US can offer in terms of rail. It's still a long way behind what much smaller economies are delivering in other parts of the world, something which I still find difficult to fully comprehend. The sad truth is that when it comes to US infrastructure, seeing at least some degree of consensus and steady progress has to be taken as a win.
You said to me as we walk into the tunnel that you've worked for Amtrak for a long time. What's the best part of your job?
This is a truly and remarkably challenging job, and that's honestly what I love about it. There are no clear-cut solutions, there are no obvious answers, and we are, dealing with old infrastructure as well as trying to now build a lot of new infrastructure. So for me, every day, that challenge is really what gets me up and keeps me motivated.
I've been with the project since August of 2021, when there was nothing here and when it was a concept on a drawing. But seeing everything come to fruition over the years, working with all the different departments, it's been a great experience.
It's very exciting and a little daunting actually, because it is such an important project for not just Amtrak, but really the whole East Coast of America.
Taking this journey has been incredible. I've absolutely loved it. But it's also really opened my eyes about the state of America's infrastructure. I knew it was struggling, I knew it was crumbling. That's been widely reported for years. But it's not until you go into those tunnels and you stand under those bridges that it really hits you and it really comes home. And what stuns me is that this is one of the world's biggest and most powerful countries. It's the biggest economy in the world. And yet it's living on borrowed time with its infrastructure. Those sites we've seen this week, millions of people and a huge chunk of this country's economy relies on those pieces of infrastructure that have just been neglected for such a long time. All week I've been blown away by the people we've encountered. The construction teams, the leaders, the men and women who are making this happen are just incredible. They've been dealt an incredibly tough hand. Infrastructure that was very old even when they inherited it, and they're now trying to do the best they can with a tough situation. What surprises me is this country owes so much of its success to infrastructure. You think back through history, the transcontinental railroads, the bridges, the tunnels, the airports, things like the Hoover Dam are what made this country, but it's almost forgotten that. It's almost like for the last 50 or 60 years, the American dream has no longer extended to infrastructure. That's changing now. I think things have got to such a state that there is wide support for getting it sorted. I just hope it's not too little too late.
This video was sponsored by Procore. You can learn more about that at the link below. Don't forget that we're raising awareness of construction's mental health crisis and supporting charities in this space through our Get Construction Talking initiative. You can learn more and find links to support over at getconstructiontalking.org. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you subscribe to the B1M.